Yeah. Oh, let me go there. So yeah, if anything isn't making sense, stop me. If any of my explanations aren't making sense, stop me. I can re-explain it. I can explain it differently. I think it's mostly going to fit though.
Okay.
So I do prefer this left approach. I'm glad you took it. Okay. So your team's a little slow on this rotation. I liked that you didn't peak until after 3:45 there. Do you know why?
No.
Okay, so they can't see your hero composition until 15 seconds into the match unless they've physically seen you, right? And that
Right.
first shot on Widow can be pretty darn valuable, especially if they don't know that you have a Widow yet. So I like that you haven't physically peaked until 3:45 because they didn't know you have a Widow, and ideally you'd peak once your team was pulling some threat. So you would sort of create a I'm going to grapple up to the top right here. You could either do this. Basically I didn't want you peeking this angle before 3:45 because this is where all their eyeballs are looking, right? Oh, sorry, I'm drawing.
Right.
Okay, so if you were going to peek, I would have wanted you to grapple up top and try and take your shot. Before, because that's a different sight line. If you're up top here, and they might still see you, but they're looking. Their screen is sort of a box, and they're sort of pointing most of that box at the choke because that's where they expect to see your team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you could potentially grapple up and take a shot in the first 15 seconds, specifically if your team is being a bit slow to rotate, which in this case they are. Ideally, your team would have already rotated through left, and they'd be starting to look left at your team a bit, and then you could peek this lower angle or the high angle. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, and you said you were drawing. I'm not going to be able to see that, am
Correct.
I?
Correct.
Okay,
You
okay. I
you
just want
can't.
to make sure I'm not missing anything.
Yeah, you're not missing anything. Unfortunately, if I share game sounds with you, I can't share drawing through Discord, and I don't have a good solution to that. It's sort of one or the other. So it's either
Okay.
but I think I can describe this well enough. So peeking the
Yeah.
low angle before 15 seconds while your team is there, not great because they're
Mhm.
looking at your team. There's almost certainly going to be a shield in the way. If your team is slow to rotate and you want to get a peek in those first 15 seconds, you should grapple up top and take that peek and see what you can get. If your
Okay.
team is fast on their rotation and is already rotating through either to the right or to the left, the opponents are going to start looking at your team, and that means
Hmm.
you could peek either place. So like that'll be the strongest peak, but that peak isn't available to you because your team is slow on this rotation. Does that
Right.
fit so far?
And I think that's kind of what I was thinking at the same time too. I think if I'm
Perfect.
not mistaken, there was like a my Sigma was right there, kind of shielding the team.
Yep.
So I figured they'd kind of be looking at him, and I was gonna want to get a cheeky
Yeah,
shot.
no, this is good. If you grapple now while your Sigma's sort of drawing some eyeballs to him, that's good. So you're gonna do that, and you immediately look for the Widow in the Widow spot, and that is good. Ideally, you're gonna flick a shot onto that Mercy. Let's see who you go for. Okay, the Mercy peaks before you stabilize, so that's fine. So you go for the Widow. You both sent a bullet stream, and you got it. Nice. You recognize that you're not going to be able to get the Mercy, so you see if you can get a follow up. So far, so good. But you okay? So what is their? Let's I'll let this play a little.
Evidence suggests a sniper ahead.
Yeah. So that was going to happen. Do you know why that was going to happen?
Not sure.
Sure. So if we're this Widow for a second and we go, okay,
Hmm.
what can I shoot at right now? Well, shooting at a ball is just kind of annoying. Maybe I'll do it if the ball's on point and being like, super annoying like that. I literally can't see these guys. Like I literally can't see the Anna and the Sigma, right? Like this Widow
Hmm.
doesn't have sightlines on the Anna and the Sigma. She doesn't really want to be shooting at ball. She's kind of interested in the Junkrat that was just here. She's kind of interested in the Mercy that are there. She can't actually see them. Here, I can zoom in on her for a second. She can't actually see them, but she has a pretty good grasp of where they are because she saw them rotate through. So she's keeping her crosshair somewhere in that general area right now, not for you, partially for you, but because it's where the only good targets are, right? Like the targets she'd like to get are you, Mercy, or Junkrat right now, because she physically can't and knows she can't get the Sigma or the Anna, and Ball is just annoying and she won't do it unless it's threatening the point seriously, etc., right?
Hmm.
So what you kind of want to do is you want to time this a little more with, okay, if I peek this, she's going to be holding her crosshair. Like, she's going to be holding her crosshair right here, so I can't really peek this because she's looking right here and I know she's looking right here. So instead, you have to sort of go, okay, you can see through the walls a little bit where your teammates are, and you have to go, okay, if my Junkrat gets a little more over here, or if my team gets in a little bit more, you need your team to be a credible threat so that she feels she just can't hold that sight line. Like if you saw that your ball decides now he's going to swing up here, that's a free peek for you, right? Because if your ball swings up here, you know she and the Mercy have to deal with the ball that showed up, right?
Right.
So you're sort of looking for windows where it is more likely that she is not just literally sitting here holding this sight line onto you. Because she'll do that. She'll literally hold this sight line onto you unless her team, unless there's something better going on. And there's not, because the real push is happening over here from Sigma Anna, and she can't contribute to that fight. So her best contribution is to lock you out of the fight, which she effectively did right here.
So that would be just an awareness issue. Because I'm gonna be honest, looking at this now, I'm like, wow, dude. Like when this was happening, I had no idea I had the Sigma and the
Sure.
and
So
on the left, and the ball was down. It
no
was just
problem.
like,
A
holy.
lot of Widow v Widow is peak timing. So as soon as you know there's a Widow on the other side, you're thinking to
Mhm.
yourself, when can I peak that she's not just going to be holding her crosshair either here or up here? Because those are the two places
Right,
she'll be holding it, and she'll be able to flick faster than you because she's presumed she was, holding the angle with her crosshair in the general direction, whereas you know where she is, so you can aim pretty fast, and you did aim pretty fast when you got her the first time. But she's pre-holding the angle, so she has an advantage over you, no question. You with me?
okay,
So you
yeah,
want to be going, hey, I want to go when my team is putting some pressure. When my tanks are doing some work, and your Sigma is doing some work, he's rotating to take space right here, and your ball's not helpless either. But when my team is creating a credible enough threat, that's when I want to take an actual fight with the Widow. If my team's not creating a credible threat, I can potentially look for, could I be over here to take shots? I'm not recommending this. This is just an example. Could I be over here to
right,
take shots? Because she can't do anything in that case. She's effectively out of the fight, whereas I'm a little in the fight. I'm not recommending that. Being here is correct. You just need to do your timings better. And your timings are, when is she in some way going to be distracted? And if you see your ball got this, she might have been more distracted if this was ticking up, the point was ticking up, and it was close to getting that first tick there, because she'd be very
mm,
interested in not letting that happen, potentially, right?
okay, right,
So look for things that, because you can see your teammates in a limited way, through the walls. You can roughly tell how
hmm,
far away they are. You can't see the opponents, but you can see roughly tell how far away your teammates are. So that leaves you with okay, if my Junkrat and my Mercy are right here, she's probably looking in this direction because all three of us are juicy targets for her, and she can't
hmm,
see my Sigma or my Anna yet, and she's not going to transition to here. If, however, you heard her take shots and you peeked just for a moment and you saw that the bullet stream was in this direction, because she will sometimes transition over to here, that would mean you could peek and you could contribute to the fight, right? You could pop up here, you
right,
can't see each other, but you can shoot at their Sigma, you can shoot at their Anna, etc. With me?
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Getting a little deep here, but understanding when her sightline is not likely to just be locked on you is very important for the Widow v Widow.
Okay.
This is not your time to
Close the
hide.
sightline. Yep.
You
Don't do it.
must
Don't do it.
manipulate me.
Ah!
Okay, and you understand, like, of course she's going to be holding that sight line. Like,
Right,
100% she's going to be holding that sight line.
right.
It's kind of a little better in that your team is a little more in now. So, hey, she has potential shots on your team, so she's a little more likely to be looking at them, but you just gave it right to her. If you just wait for 3 seconds, she then gets a little anxious and wants to contribute to this team fight rather than do nothing. But
Mm,
because you immediately went, she just went, nope, I'll immediately eliminate the bigger threat. Give her tougher choices where she goes, if I don't contribute, If I just hold this angle, I'm not contributing to this fight, and look at all these shots that are right here, and my team might fall behind without me contributing. You're not contributing either, so her team's not really going to fall behind, but she wants to contribute. You follow what I'm saying? So make the
Yeah.
decision hard for her. You just immediately went, "Oh, well, I'll give you this right here," and yeah, you get it. Like, I'm not going to make you
Yeah.
wait at all. It's you vary peak timings a little bit.
Okay.
Enemy in my sight.
Okay, so what is the status of this fight?
Mm, I guess. I don't know.
No problem. So it's
We're down.
you're down one, and Mercy's res is on cooldown because she resed you, and it's been 10 seconds for your res, but you died like 2 seconds after getting resed, so she's still got time left in her cooldown. She's not likely to be able to get that junk up, or if she can, it'll be at the very end, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Excellent, excellent. So that's just want you being aware of that fight. That's fine. You can still potentially peek into this and even it out. Now it's even. Okay, so now you saw a bullet trail. So where is she?
On the right, somewhere on the right. I remember thinking, I don't know if she's holding that little high ground space that's by the mega, or if she's down low.
So she's down low, and we can see through walls here, but that's only in the replay or when you put up Widow's Kiss. But if we look here, I'm gonna show you that bullet trail again, just so that you get this. Okay,
Mm,
so based on that bullet trail, you've got a pretty good idea of where she is, right?
right.
Yeah, so she's on low ground. It's weird that she's on low ground. It's weird that she's dropped here rather than going up to over here. But probably what happened is she went, this isn't safe. Maybe the ball came up and bothered her, or junk did or something. So she dropped because she didn't want to use grapple because she wanted to have grapple to escape if something else came after her. So that's probably why she's positioned here. But that tells you where she's positioned, and that's very valuable information. With that, you know, okay, you know where she is. She doesn't yet know where you are. You could potentially transition through here and take a shot, and she'd never expect you to be here.
Ah.
Whereas you can tell if she just shot up like that, she's ready for you right here, right? Like she's ready for that. So that's the sort of thing you think about. If she's shooting up, this is where she's watching, or where she was watching a moment ago, anyways. But it's good that you checked her last spot. Like, that was the correct place to be checking. And your team is a more credible threat. You see the fight's happening. It's devolved into a 5v5 at this point. So the fight is clearly on and happening, which means she's less likely to be willing to just hold your angle. So you peeking now, this was a good time to peek. And you just saw her mine, and that gives you another idea of where she is. Because you saw the throw angle on that. Okay, you can contribute from here if you want, but you gotta be hyper aware if she grapples up. Yeah. No big, no big. Not so worried about that one.
Personne n'échappe à mon regard. Let's try that again.
And you go out the left door while she's got Widow's Kiss up. You're pretty safe if you go up left door here. The only place she could really threaten you from is on top of Archway there, and we've seen Widows do that, teams do that, but it doesn't look to me like her team has won that fight decisively enough to take that forward arch as a hold spot. I don't like this. So you're effectively holding an angle with your cursor right here, but nothing can really appear at the spot you're holding. If you look at where you're holding your sight line, looking at this spot right here. Now, the only thing that could really appear there would be like a Pharah or an Echo who came through and then went up, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're holding up here because you're worried the Widow is going to do a forward arch to try and farm staggers, I get it. But in that case, you would be holding an angle that is a little higher on the screen. You'd have this, a few degrees up so that it's a smaller, easier flick for you, right?
Right. Now,
Go ahead.
just really quick, I guess my thought process here was I know that she has her sights,
Hmm.
so I think I was just chilling back and just in the meantime. Is that a bad thought
No, no,
process?
no. It is not bad at all to go, I'm just going to wait out eyes. It's foolish of me to challenge Widow when she has eyes up, but an
Mm-hmm.
otherwise even or we're behind fight, right? Like it's
Uh-huh.
totally reasonable to do that. But if you're going to be holding a zoomed angle like this, and you're holding a very safe, conservative zoomed angle, you don't expect to get much out of this. But even
Mm-hmm.
so, your crosshair should be sitting in a place where it is more likely to be an easy flick if something does show up. And the only
Ah,
place for that right
got you.
now is up on top of this arch, because that's the only place a
Okay.
threat is reasonably going to show up. Or maybe you could try and hold something to the left, sort of to the left of statue over here, where maybe the enemies are going to push out and, there'll be a Junkrat on the ground that your crosshair, oh, easy tiny little flick to finish him, etc. Make
Right.
sense?
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense.
Because you're holding zoomed so that it's pre-charged, but you can do better than that and hold it where someone's likely to appear. Because you'll notice she's doing that. You've noticed when we've talked about places she's likely to be looking, she's often holding
Mm-hmm.
those angles with her crosshair very close to where she expects her target to appear.
Okay.
Current command. Attack objective.
Der Kampf ist noch nicht vorbei.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And you saw she was distracted that time. She can't just hold the angle on you forever.
Merci.
You can work a little bit. There is a window for somewhat stable aim at the very peak of your arc when you grapple like that. I notice you're not really trying to find your shot until, how do I say, until you've landed, and that's okay, but there is actually a somewhat stable window that you can get used to finding sort of at the peak of your grapple arch, if that makes sense. If you're looking to be able to take your shot a little bit sooner. It's harder than taking it after you've landed, but it's faster. So there's a balance to be had there.
Okay.
I wouldn't put a ton of thought into that yet. That's more for the future thing. Right now, we're going to have to be much more about, okay, when am I not being looked at? When can I peek when I'm not being looked at is so far the biggest thing I want you focusing on.
Okay.
Okay, so you saw that was a kind of lazy, slow drift back to the Junkrat. So let me get to this. Okay, I'm going to slow this down. Okay, you're looking. There he is. There's your target. And then you see the Junkrat has come back, and that's good. That's fine. I'm slowing this down to 0.25 to exaggerate it. I think you can flick that better. And what I mean by that is I think you can flick closer to you can more roughly flick closer to the Junkrat, and then you can adjust from there, which you sort of do here. Like, that was better. No, I think I'm being too critical. That was fine. You just didn't hit the shots. When I slowed that down, that looked better.
You're not wrong though. I do struggle with my flicks big time. I don't have confidence
It's
in
sort of
this
a
game.
two-part process. So if you have to hit a big flick, what you're going to do is you're going to go, okay, let's say there's an enemy over where that Widow's Mine is right now. You do a pretty big flick that can be rough and dirty to get you close to that mine, and then you do a
Hmm.
second, smaller, more precise
Right.
flick. Okay. Okay, good.
Objective. Gather in this position. Evidence suggests a sniper ahead.
You shot the mine. Ouch. Ouch. Okay. So that's fine. I mean, you know her timing on when she's coming back. It's sort of a little unfortunate that you literally just kind of caved and went, well, I'm going to shoot the mine because it's there. The mine is like almost completely unimportant to you and did create a small vulnerability window for you where now I don't have a charged shot and my shot didn't really get me any value.
Yeah.
Not a big deal.
Loaded.
Unlucky.
Unlucky's is right.
Coordinate your attacks on the objective.
Just play from here, yeah. I'd actually just SMG that bubble down, because you just need that bubble to break before you can do anything, right? And you get more total DPS out. If you're not hitting headshots, you get more total DPS out, especially at this range, without zooming and just SMGing until that bubble's broken. And now you'd go back to zooming, where you can potentially hit headshots where it matters. Yep.
No one can hide from the hunters.
And unfortunately, this is not a very good infocyte. Unless this infocyte is because you're going to swap right now, you want it instead. Like, you've taken the point, and you're going to waste, 10 seconds rotating forward. And yeah, they're going to let you rotate forward to choke for free because you have infocytes up now. But you generally don't want to use ults just to accomplish rotations. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, I guess, and just I guess a precursor. When I not rebut, but I guess I just want you to understand my thought process.
By
as
all
well.
means.
So I guess I popped this to see where the widow was and know where to, I guess, position myself for this upcoming fight. Now, can you break down why that's, I guess, not the right train of thinking?
Oh, sure. So I understand that. Wanting to know where their widow is totally valuable, but your infocyte is going to basically be over by the time you get to here. It's going to be just about over, right?
Okay.
Their
Yeah.
widow can simply move. I mean, as soon as I hear infocyte, I immediately look at the clock and go, for 15 seconds they can see me, and I'm going to take hard cover, and then I'm going to change my positioning after 15 seconds. You follow what I'm saying? Like, the
Okay.
instant
Yeah,
I hear a
yeah.
Widow's ultimate, I go, what's the clock say? It says, 3:42. So in 15 seconds, for the next 15 seconds, I'm using hard cover. And then after those 15 seconds, let me pop up over here. So
Okay.
that's what it does. But also, this isn't valuable space. Getting from here to here on 2CP, it is very rare that this gets seriously contested, this travel position,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So I don't want you. It would sort of be like if you're. Let's put it this way. If you're Zenyatta, went, okay, I want us to get from here to here safely, so I'm going to pop Transcendence. Unless they've just been farming you here for the last 2 minutes, you'd kind of be annoyed with your Zenyatta, right?
Yeah.
You can think of Widow's Kiss the same way, where you go, hey, if I'm here and now I pop Widow's Kiss, now these guys are going, oh shoot, we want to take hard cover because they can see us and we don't want to, get eliminated while they can see us. And while they're taking hard cover, they're closing their own sight lines. It's a lot easier for now your team to go from here to take really aggressive positionings because the other team is trying to keep themselves behind hard cover, right? So like a Widow's Kiss from here is much more powerful for your team than a Widow's Kiss from back here.
Okay.
I think I'm
so
calling it.
like use it to zone.
It's not so much that you're using it to zone. I mean, you would love to use it and actually get your headshots off of it, etc. But it's going to be easier to get those headshots if your team goes, okay, now we're ready. Now we're pushing with those Widow's Kiss. We know exactly where they are. We can set up super easy dives because we know exactly where the backline is or things like that. And then we go, okay, and now we dive. And then in the chaos of your dive, you grapple up and go, okay, well, my team went in. They knew exactly where their targets were, and so do I. And now I can peek freely because I know exactly where the widow is and her angle is closed right now, etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
I understand.
Okay. I was worried I gave a little too much information there, or
No,
infocyte.
no, you're okay.
I'm calling it Widow's Kiss. I think that's her rifle. Infocyte is what I meant there.
Okay.
Okay.
Enemies in our orbit.
Der Kampf ist noch nicht vorbei.
Nice.
About to break.
So I certainly can't argue with the results of that infocyte. You got the widow, and then you got her again after she got res. That part wasn't due to the Infocyte, but you chained it off of the Infocyte. So I certainly can't argue with the results there. Like, hey, that's good for this level of Widow. But again, that doesn't change the conceptually this is how you get more value out of it type
Mhm.
thing. Because if they
Okay.
reset you when you're back here, let's say the Widow had gotten you when you're back here, that's annoying,
Uh-huh.
and it's going to cost you 11 seconds, 12 seconds, because you're going to be in respawn, then you're going to have to walk 2 seconds worth of time to get here. But if the Widow gets you here, that's going to cost you the same 10 seconds of respawn, but instead of 2 seconds to get to here, it's going to cost you 5 seconds to get to here, so it's 15 seconds. So again, you see it's more valuable to go here because it's less important if you get eliminated right here when your
Right.
team isn't up there, etc. Cool. And
Right.
you're hit, not Lance Pride. Perfect. Yeah, this is right in this case. You're going to the minefield. Mego is probably your friend, but Melee, good. So you do want to have a bit of a different angle than your team here. That's something that's good. Now that you have health back, you get to a situation where you go, hey, this is okay, but I want to find a different angle when I can. Whether that angle is up here, whether that angle is even just a little higher on top of this,
Okay.
or whether you transition back to here. It's really hard. Like, you don't win by being back here, but it's your allies have a lot of safety if you're back here, where they pretty much know it's really hard for them to get dove or something if they're on the center of the point, because you're protecting the center of the point, and the opponents can't really get to you because your opponents now have to go to the point, so they can't go to you. Like that Winston, if he comes back, unless he comes back and there's 4 other people alive at the same time, which isn't going to happen at this point, he can't go jump and deal with you because the objective is ticking away on him. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Whereas if you're here, the Winston can go, 2 birds with 1 stone. It's my job to get Widow, and it's my job to contest the objective, and I can do both at the same time.
Right. Okay, yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Great.
Too bad I didn't do it.
It's okay. You learn for next time. And, obviously, you don't get caught in that tire if you're back there.
Right.
Now, the tire still probably does the job and gets 3 of them, and your push is probably still over after getting 3 of them, though it's possible you'd have been able to lock in that second tick. But
Yeah.
this is now over. Not a big deal. Oh, you did lock in the second tick, but you won't get 3. Okay. And this is over. Your balls just needs to reset. Which he does. Good check. Should check here as well. This is the other good Widow hold for her. Yep. Okay. And your team, you see how when you popped up here, the Junkrat, the Mercy, and the Widow were all looking to the left? You can see that in the replay because you can see through walls in the replay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why that is? Do you know what's over there?
Is it our ball?
It is your ball. So that's the sort of thing you kind of want to be aware of, hey, if my ball is over here, this becomes a great angle for me. Whereas if my ball is doing stuff over here, maybe this becomes a better angle for me. You see what I'm saying? Because it's going to drag their screens to look in the other direction, which makes it safe for you to use your grapple because it's less likely that the Widow is just going to be holding that line if there's something interesting going on that her team is reacting to at a great angle away from where you're poking out.
Right.
Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
Yeah, she is the Mercy and you don't, and she's now aware of you, and I don't really think your team is in here. I think your team was trying to push off of this, but from what I can tell, everything is looking your way now. Again, you can't see this in the game. You can see this in the replay, though, but you should have a feel of the fight of, okay, is my team doing much? You could do a quick peek left while the angle is closed and see that your Reaper and your Ball are back here, and that's not going to be very distracting if they're back here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you're effectively trying to fight a Mercy-pocketed Widow without a Mercy pocket. Oh, now you're dropping. Okay, that's good then. You're choosing not to take it. And now you can change your angle so that, yep. And this is good because now your ball's back in. So now they're not going to be looking, and now's when you want to peek. And you can take a more aggressive peek. That's fine. I don't mind that. That was conceptually correct. That you were going, oh hey, my ball is on point, my Reaper is on point. Those are credible threats. There's stuff to the right of them. Like that Widow has 3 different directions that she needs to be looking, and we'll put that in perspective. Where from her perspective, there's a threat. You know, we're standing on top of her. There's stuff over here that is threatening to her team that she'd like to help with. There's a Reaper and a ball on point, and oh, you got to stop that Reaper. At least force out his Wraith before he gets to the team. And you could show up here. You could show up over here and then, you know, peek, etc. Or you could show back up over here. So, like, your peak timing was correct. You just kind of did the most predictable peak for Widow, which is right up here. And it's the most predictable because it's the strongest one if you can establish here. But it's also, because it's the strongest one, the most predictable, which might have made a peak, you know, down through here better. This is a weak angle, but hey, you can still do some work from here, or you can grapple up on top of this, and then this is a little stronger of an angle. You see what I'm saying, right?
I see. Yeah, and I actually have never even thought of those other 2 angles, to be honest. I guess just because I feel so.
Oh, they're much weaker.
There.
Yeah. They're much weaker angles. On the other hand, you're less exposed by the very fact that your team is pulling eyes to them in 2 different directions already, right?
Okay, yeah.
So, like, you'd be exposed if your team is just sitting here at choke and you Widow up here, or you grapple up here, you're going to get shot at pretty much every time. But if your team is on point, or your team is over here, now your team is in 2 different places and both of them are threatening, it's much harder for them to go, oh yeah, let me just constantly be looking at that, etc. Because if the Mercy is pocketing her and she's looking here, while your Mercy is over here, if she just holds this angle the whole time and you don't show up and you just wait behind the wall the whole time, and the Mercy pockets her the whole time, well, now she's creating a 4v5 for her own team because she's got the Mercy pocket, you don't, and she's not doing anything. So she can't not do anything forever. You can literally just sit behind this wall and outvalue her. You can sit behind the wall and never peek and outvalue her if she's got the Mercy pocket the whole time.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So you're not actually going to sit behind the wall and not do anything the whole time because she's not actually going to hold the angle the whole time if she's got the Mercy pocket. She has to contribute elsewhere, and she knows that, so she will. And you're kind of playing a bit of a wait and guessing game of, do you have 2 seconds of patience? Do you have 3 seconds of patience? Do you have 5 seconds of patience? Do I have 7 seconds of patience? Because 7 seconds of patience could mean you were contributing to the fight for 5 of those seconds, and now my team is falling behind. So it's a bit of a chicken and the egg thing between you two.
I see.
Damage. Merci.
Zarya, ready for duty. Enemy in my sight.
Okay. Okay. It's not terrible. It's just, think about where your team is. Your team is still rotating forward. So if you get a pick, this really helps your team because, you know, it's going to force out Mercy Res, which, okay, that's cool. Now your team gets, we'll call it a 7v6 because your team still has Mercy Res. But it's a little dangerous because your team isn't really a credible threat yet. So the Widow does not have to be... There's less incentive for the Widow to be looking at your team yet because your team, come on, a Zarya all the way back here, that's not threatening. A Reaper all the way back here, that can't do anything to the team. And your Anna's down here. So, like, it's not, and your ball's still here. He's not in yet. You know, if your ball's here, that's a lot more threatening. If your Zarya's, you know, walking across bridge, that's more threatening. If your Reaper's here, that's more threatening. Not really threatening yet. So this is a higher risk play. It's not necessarily a bad play, because if you get the pick, you force res, and now you've got the 7v6. But it's a little lower reward, because if you get an elimination when your team is already in, they can potentially deny the res. Mercy can't go anywhere to res people if there's a Reaper sitting on it, or a ball can knock her away, etc. Whereas your ball is not going to be able to deny any reses from where he is right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Well, spoiler alert, I don't get the pick.
Okay, but we're understanding timings and when it's more safe to peek and when your peek has more value in the Widow Mirror is sort of what we're doing here. So again, your team wasn't a credible threat yet, and you get eliminated.
Yeah.
60 seconds remaining.
Heroes never die. Fire in the hole!
Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
Okay. You had an ult there, and you weren't going to get another team fight. So, like, if for some reason you don't cap this here, there's only 30 seconds left on the clock. If you all got wiped immediately with 30 seconds left, you might get one more team fight, but that's not going to happen, right? This is going to bleed out a little. And since that's the case, it's actually probably worth it to pop this just so your team knows which direction the respawns are coming from, so they can eliminate them faster. I wouldn't necessarily do that if you were concerned about losing the push and went, hey, we might have to do another one, and it'll be good to have my ult to do what we talked about before from the choke, etc., etc. But because this is hitting last fight territory, just do it to cap faster effectively, because it lets your teammates.
Makes sense.
Perfect.
Cool.
Initiating match. Ready for battle.
Should be able to do one more, and now we just accelerate.
I take it you don't want my autograph.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attackers incoming.
Yeah, so
Defend
you've got two positions you can play from with Widow to start the match. You can play from here, or you can play from here. And I'd really only play from here if you have an Orisa to throw a shield up here for you, to be perfectly honest. You don't want to be here because your angles just aren't very good to do work. Now, I know you're worried about a Mirror Widow, but here's the thing about the match and why it's harder for the attacking Widow. She has to push into your sightline. You can pre-hold this sightline, and you can even back up a little so that, like, it's hard to hit you from the ground, and, like, now you're pre-holding that top sightline for Widow, right? Or you can be here where you can flick and get ground value. Up to you. It just leaves you a little more exposed. But you get to be pre-zoomed where she has to grapple up or open, whereas you can sort of be pre-opened in a sightline that she has to walk into one of your two sightlines there, right? So that's got value. And also, if she really wants to challenge you, she's going to use grapple. And if you don't like the challenge, you can close the sight line, where her version of closing the sight line is, oh, I don't like the duel, it's going poorly, is to drop. And now she has to use a cooldown again to get back into it.
I see.
So this really is strong Widow positioning, and this is where you're going to want to play as Widow. You play here. You can retreat to here, or if they're running a dive cop, you can grapple to join your team if they, start taking this around through here, etc.
Okay.
I will draw them into my web.
This is fine. You're saying that I'm not going to take the fight with their Widow. I'm just going to contribute over here. So you didn't need to do that. And the reason I say that is you're meaningfully locking these two out of the fight. Are these two really contributing to the fight? Like, Junkrat's throwing some nades, but can you really throw meaningful nades at this distance?
Probably not.
Okay. Whereas if you look at her and where she was playing from, she was here until a moment ago. Then she goes up here. Well, is she Does she have any sight on anyone from up here besides you?
No, not at all.
Right. In a second, she might be able to shoot at a Reinhardt shield, but who cares? Oh, she's shooting at a Reinhardt shield. Whereas you're going, okay, I'm not getting the Elim on Junkrat, and it would feel better if I was getting the Elim on Junkrat, but I'm locking Junkrat out of the fight, and Mercy is choosing to stay with him, so I'm keeping these two out, keeping their contribution very minimal, whereas her contribution is nothing. I don't need to open this to take a shot at her, because her contribution is nothing. I can just keep these two zoned.
Hmm. Yeah, I got scared because she picked that Anna. I didn't even realize where my team was and her position and all. I guess I was just trying to take her out to relieve some pressure.
Yeah, no, and I get it, and if you make it, it's great, but it's the sort of
Mhm.
thing where
It's like high risk, high reward.
yeah, it sort of is, and you want to make riskier plays when you're behind or when the fight's even. You want to make more conservative plays when you're ahead. And you were actually
I understand.
ahead because you were locking two people out of the fight where she was doing nothing.
I understand. Okay.
The enemies of Talon will be
Go right.
eliminated.
Okay, that's fine. The other cool thing to do would have been to go up through here because they'd never expect it, and you'd have. You see what I'm saying? You'd have just dropped and been like,
Yeah.
"Bye," but
Yeah, I know of that angle. I can't consistently get there.
okay, that's fine.
I might hook, so I was just like,
As long as you know about it and know why it would be useful, that's fine. If you're saying,
Okay.
hey, I can't consistently hit that grapple, totally fine, not worth it, but you can go practice that, just on the map in a
Yeah.
custom game at some later point if you want. And that's good. You see, your Zen, is it your Zen? Your Zen was already shooting at her, so she was distracted, eliminating your Zen, but she was looking in that direction, so it's a good time for you to peek. When someone else is poking at her, that's a great time for you to try and poke at her too, because she's almost certainly going to be looking at the person who's already shooting at her. Unfortunate. Yeah, you should have closed the angle because you had teammates up there who were going to get her regardless, and she was definitely going to lock you because, widow pride, etc., etc.
Right.
But that's fine. It's again
so when you say close the angle, what do you mean?
Oh, sure. So if you're here,
Mhm.
she closes the angle on you by going behind the pillar, so
Oh,
she can't
right,
see
right.
you
I
and
see
you
what
can't
you
see
mean.
her.
Right.
She
So you're
opens
saying
the
go
angle.
behind that.
Exactly. She opens the angle
Okay.
by going to the right or left of this pillar. You
Okay.
close the angle by going behind this, and you open the angle by coming back out.
Okay, I understand. I understand. So you're saying, okay, gotcha. Good.
Où en étais-je? Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
Good. You keep risking it. You keep peeking out there, and you don't need to. There's a juicy Anna and Sigma over there. You don't need to just Widow's Kiss that down. So that barriers you just rifle it down. You don't zoom at it. Okay, now it's gone. So good. Hey, you got her. Good stuff. You could have popped your ult there. This is an even enough fight that you actually could have popped your ult and she would have gone to the hills, which is fine with you because her team can't go to the hills. You know what I'm saying? They're too pushed in. This would have actually been a good ult. Popping an ult in an even fight like that, plenty good. But you got her without the ult, which is, more impressive. But we're not looking to be more impressive. We're looking to win.
Yeah, absolutely.
No one can hide from the hunters.
So again, this probably isn't the time to pop it because I think they're going to get that point. I think it's very decisive that they're going to get that point at this point, though I could be wrong. And if that's the case, you're infaciting into a lost fight, you're ulting into a lost fight, and if they immediately cap the point, your infacite is sort of hurting them for their rotation, which we kind of expect them to get anyway. So I'd rather do it when they've got all 6 people here and are ready to push, and you go, nope, I'm taking 15 seconds off the clock, because they're not going to push when you pop your infocyte. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I think I was actually in this. Um, I think I popped it for some reason. I don't know why. I did know that they were going to get that for sure. I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, they got it. And I think I was just popping it to, I guess, as a early warning in case there was a snowball coming or something. I don't know. I
Yeah,
just,
I get it. Snowballs aren't super dangerous since they did the respawn timer change when they've capped first, where your people will
okay.
come back in like 2 seconds. If you were playing the game
Yeah.
long time ago, that used to be a real concern. But now,
Uh-huh.
if someone dies within a couple seconds of the point being capped, or someone's dead and then they cap the point, it'll like turn their respawn timer down to 2 seconds, go 1-2, and they're back. So it's pretty hard to get
Oh,
snowballed in that
okay.
sense anymore.
Okay. Okay. I understand. Okay. Cool.
Objective lost.
Do we have extra rounds? No. Okay.
New defense point. Objective B.
Yeah, so they show up here, and it looks like they're going to just push immediately, whereas you could have delayed this push 15 seconds. Or if they push through it, you'd just be like, well, okay, we have eyes on you. Push up. And now you have to decide if you think if you can play conservative or you can play aggressive. Conservative is, you play here, you maybe play from your angles, you look for stuff, you can tuck deeper to the left and just shoot onto point, right? And just shoot at their Winston, that's fine. Or you can try and go, secret mission, loop around behind, and then is there something back here, or push up to here, and is there something here, etc. Those are kind of your ways to play at this point.
Now, on those secret missions, I don't know if I'm mechanically
That's fine. That's fine.
consistent enough to actually pull that off and not feed out of my mind.
I
I
get
don't
it.
know.
I get it. Then play the more conservative stuff. We've mostly highlighted sort of how to play a more conservative Widow, when it's safe to peek, etc. I was just laying out
Okay.
the options.
All right, cool.
And now you're winning, so you wouldn't go on a risky mission because you're already winning. I wouldn't peek the same angle that your team is peeking, though, because their Widow, by now, is holding this angle, and she's just shooting down here. And if you peek this, you're peeking the same angle that your Anna and your Junkrat are shooting from, so she already wants to be looking in this direction, because these things are poking
Right.
at her, right? So instead, you could go up here and be like, okay, what can I see from here? And the answer might be nothing. Can I see anything over there, etc. But it's still effectively better, because if they do any sort of push in, it's hard for their Sigma. He's not going to, but if their Sigma wanted to push back in, for example, and he's coming forward, and then suddenly he can't come forward anymore, because if he does, his shield isn't blocking you and these guys, it's only blocking one or the other, right?
Right.
Cool. Yeah, so I don't like that you're on the same angle here. I'd have preferred you pushed up left side and actually reversed your thing from earlier. You could have even gone up to here and been like, hey, I'm going to do this, but you could have at least gone up to here and been like, okay, what can I see, etc.
Ah, okay. Okay.
I'm on fire!
Oh no. Close. Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't keep re-peeking that like that. I'd go, she has an eye on where I am, let me go somewhere else. Because this isn't really like meaningful stuff happening right now. Your team is doing just fine. I'd probably just drop here and go, okay, let me shoot down point. Like I can drop and I can shoot at this thing on point, or I can drop or I can shoot at this angle on the Sigma. You don't need to force this duel right now.
So once you're compromised in a case like this, you need to just get out and just
Not
give up on the fight.
necessarily, but the position she has isn't really valuable. Like she's not really winning anything from here. Like
Wow. Yeah.
she can win the duel
Okay.
against you, but like, oh no, I'm letting you have that positioning. Oh no. Like
Yeah. Okay.
She has to move.
That's
She has
funny.
to
Yeah.
transition forward. So it's like, okay,
Okay.
fine, I'll leave and just contribute to this fight that's actually happening while you do nothing. That sounds like a great plan, rather than force a duel that, it's a kind of meaningless duel because if you get her, it's not meaningless. Like, yes, it's 12 seconds for her to get back to where she was, and if you die, it's about 12 seconds to get back to where you were. It's sort of like,
Yeah.
this isn't. We're not fighting for
Okay.
all the marbles right here.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense.
And she's going to get something. Like, in those, she does know how, that's 10 seconds. And in the 10 seconds, she did take the strongest offensive Widow position. So it's not nothing. But
Right.
I just would have said, hey, you can go shoot at their Sigma instead.
Okay. Yeah.
Grapple away. Yep. So I probably would swap off Widow here. If you're one-tricking Widow, that's fine, but it's going to be really hard for you to get work done on Widow into their Sigma Reinhardt when they're up this many people and you're down this many people. You follow what I'm saying? Like, you're missing
Yeah.
3 people, you're about to be missing 5 people because your Ball and your Winston are both weak, and you can't do anything into them alone as Widow. So this would be
Right.
a come out as Tracer, come out as May, come out as Reaper type thing, just to try and bleed time off the clock, just to try and get back into it. Widow can be very helpful for getting back into it, but not if she's the only one alive. She needs like 3 or 4 people be incredible threats on the other side, and you intentionally are coming out on the opposite side of where people usually come out, which I like for that. But you see where I'm going.
Yeah. And
You also wanted to shoot a squishy there. If you eliminate their soldier, that's got some real value. It was going to be hard to immediately eliminate a tank.
Mm-hmm.
And now you go for the Tracer. Okay. Okay, and now you transition up right side since you're playing Tracer. If your team is going this way, you're going to go up the flank, and maybe you can catch someone who's going out this way, or maybe you can catch someone who tries to retreat this way, etc. You wouldn't walk up the same sight line because you're still playing against a Widow, and if she's not running, she's looking this way, and you wouldn't want to be on the same sight line as your team. And if you want to go back to Widow now, that's totally fine. No comment.
Oh man, I even said it in voice chat when that happened. I was like, "Oh my goodness!" Wow.
It's all good. So you'd be better off if you'd gone up mid since your team had gone up left. You're a pretty fragile character as Tracer, so you don't want spam or shots poke that is meant for other people to hit you because that's really expensive. So you want to be coming in from a different angle than your team so that the only shots that find you are shots that are meant for you, and you're a hard shot. It's hard to aim at you. People don't want to aim at you at this level. So you want to be going around, etc. You don't want to be accidentally getting a soldier rocket that was meant for the Lucio in front of you to your left, etc.
Right.
Coalescence is charging.
Seconds remaining.
So once your Winston committed that bubble, that was your window to go in. I get you don't want to go into the tack visor, but you do want to, once your team is committing to this with bubble and rally, you're going to get some armor. The bubble's blocking some of the tack visor. It's worth going in at that point. Or
Yeah, and honestly, like it was that bad. I guess my situational awareness. I thought that was their rally.
no, that is their rally. I'm backwards. It's their rally and it is their Winston bubble. I'm backwards. And it's your
Oh,
visor.
okay.
I'm flipped. It's your visor. No. Hold on. It's their rally. It's your bubble. It's their visor. Okay,
Right,
I'm
right. I
backwards.
was kind of just waiting
So
it out.
that's fine. Well, you can't really wait it out, unfortunately, because
Mhm.
your team is pretty
Committed.
your team is pretty committed to this. Like your divers are in, and because your divers are in, it's your beat though. Because your divers are in, you're taking this fight. So it's correct
Right.
to go, hey, let me go stick a pulse bomb on this McCree and get out. That's what you'd do right here. You'd go, okay, I'm one blink range, so I start my pulse bomb, blink and stick, and then blink out. Like that's how you'd look at this. Perfect. That's fine. Enough work got done. They shouldn't be able to cap off this. Good. Okay, so you got it, and that's fine. I think we still saw plenty to improve on your Widow, and what we're primarily going to focus that around. This is going to feel like it's Widow Duel specific, and it's certainly more important in Widow Duels, but it's important in general, which is you want to peak at times when the opponents are not going to be looking at where you're going to peak from. And that's mostly going to be determined by, hey, I want to peak when my team is making some sort of distraction. That might be Ryan's in there swinging a hammer. That might be Winston just jumped in. That might be Zenyatta just threw a right-click volley from some different angle. So now they're likely to look at him, and I can peek for a moment from this angle. We spent a lot of time on that. I'm really hoping that makes sense. It matters even
Yeah.
for more than just the Widow duel. Like in general, it's easier to hit how the first shot is easier to hit on someone than after they're aware
Yeah.
of you and they're sort of reacting.
Yep.
And it's that same principle. So if they're looking at the Zenyatta, that's a almost free first shot that you get to take. And then
Right.
the other big thing we're going to do is I want you to make that your main focus. And you're not going to master that. You're simply not, because that's a very high level skill and you'll be building on that for a very long time as Widowmaker, up into Masters, up into GM, etc. But
Mhm.
I want you to really focus on that. I want you to be thinking about that. Be thinking about your peak timings and peaking when they won't be looking at you, and know why they won't be looking at you. And I don't care if you lose a couple games while you're doing that, because you're building a habit thinking about that, and you're going to turn that into a habit, and then you're going to start performing better with that. And once you feel like, hey, I've sort of locked this in. I'm sort of doing this without thinking about it now. Maybe I'm like 80% of the way to doing this without thinking about it. At that point, I want you to start thinking about your infocyte uses. And your infocyte there, specifically, I don't want it being used in the transition period between point 1 and 2, like we saw both directions there. You want to
Mhm.
use it when it's going to get more value, which is usually going to be, if you're on offense, right when your team is about to push, because it tells them, hey, where their targets are, etc. So when your whole team is staged and ready to push, or when you think the opposing team is staged and about to push, because it'll delay their push, or they're, pushing through Infocyte, which is really hard because you get free shots on them, etc. Right?
Right.
Okay. So I think the Infocyte thing is probably easier, but the bigger thing is the peak timing window, and that's what I want to be your focus between now and our next session. Sound good?
Okay. Yeah, sounds really good. I really appreciate it.
Of course, of course. Let me stop that.